J. Baba. I thought discussing the beauty of Baba's humanity this week would be interesting. We speak so much of his divinity, but seldom take time to acknowledge his perfect humanity. Baba really was the perfect man. The stories of his life are so relatable. He came here to show us his compassion, and meet us on our level. Baba could have been working with such big and more important things, but often he would talk to people on a human to human level, asking them about their sleep, their families, and their work lives. In some ways, he was more human than we allow ourselves to be. He embraced his radical moods instead of denying how he felt. Did he do that out of compassion, or was it because this is where the real joy and love are? In the full experience of life, that is. I sometimes feel that Baba is just up there watching us go through all our suffering. I often forget that he came down here and experienced the same as we do, and much more. Why do we put God on such a pedestal? Sometimes hearing or reading the stories of Baba's life brings home just how human he was. Baba has likes and dislikes just as we do. He had preferences, told jokes, played games, and had bodily functions. He somehow was able to participate in creation while he orchestrated it perfectly. He went out of his way to connect to people's daily experiences and touch their hearts. Was this perhaps him modeling a way to be? Do you find yourself trying to only connect to the highest version of someone and not accepting their humanity? I'm not exactly sure where this topic is going to go tonight, but I want to welcome everything. If you have a story that brings home your experience of Baba's humanity, it could be just what someone else needs to hear. In his love, Margi and Peter.
Thank you, Tony. J. Baba. Does anyone have anything that strikes a chord with them through that email, or that they could relate to, that they'd like to share with that?
I actually wanted to thank Margie for putting this together because the topic came at kind of a perfect time in my life where I thought about where I was in my spiritual journey and realized that there is nothing wrong with being human and going through human emotions. So this was kind of like a perfect wake up call for me almost. I was reading about one incident in Baba's life where one of the Mandali said something injurious to him. It wasn't particularly injurious, but it was a slight comment, I think, disobeying him. And he said something to the effect of, he gave that classic story where a woman was sentenced to death and she didn't feel the stones pelting her, but felt it really, really strongly when her own child threw a rose at her. And to me, it really brought into light the fact that although he was God, as a human, he was incredibly sensitive. And even in some of his earlier photos, when I was talking with some other Baba lovers, they talk about how in his younger days, he'd almost look innocently, not lacking in confidence, but there was a curiosity or uncertainty about him with regards to how the world would perceive him, right? Whether people would truly love him as he wanted to be loved and deserved to be loved. And I went through something interesting in my own life. I never thought I was the kind of person who'd be necessarily affected by betrayal or people close in my life cutting me off or shutting me off. I went through something very similar with my cousin. I've always been very, very close with her. She's never felt that way about me, but I have always been very protective of her for some spiritual reason that I could never divine, right? It's not like we were close to each other geographically or whatever growing up, but we went through a set of arguments where she was getting wild in college, posted some stuff on social media that was really kind of inappropriate and kind of nasty. And I went to kind of talk her out of it. And she said, I don't want a relationship anymore with you. I'm blocking you. And I'd always thought I was the kind of person who would never be affected by this kind of thing. But the experience humbled me because it bothered me a lot more than I thought it would. And so during this time, I was first hesitant or didn't really accept or even process the idea that this could be happening to me. And then I realized, well, it's a part of being human, going through misunderstanding, having people misunderstand you, cut you off, whatever. And I came to peace with it. And for some reason, I knew that the final step in my healing would be sharing that with this group today. I knew it the moment I saw the email from Margi. So I just wanted to say, because I know there have been others here that have talked about people in their lives who they care for, cutting them off. I think things at the end of the day work out exactly how they're supposed to, but there's nothing wrong in feeling a bit of indignation or disappointment at that. I mean, even the Avatar went through these kinds of doubts when he was human. I mean, there were some things that he just never faltered on, right? So for example, throughout his entire lifetime, he was free of lust, right? We knew that he wasn't an ordinary human being. He could touch the most beautiful woman in the world with the innocence of a newborn baby, right? There were some things that were always godlike about him, but there was also this human layer of expectation, especially from his loved ones, that I think made him even more endearing. So I wanted to thank Margi for sending the topic again, because personally, it was really important. I knew the moment I saw it that I had to say something this meeting.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I really appreciate that. Yeah, I was sorry I'm a little bit late, guys. I had a client meeting that went over. But no, I personally was so excited for this because I agree with you that I think that Baba's humanity is one of the most beautiful parts of his avatarhood. Of course, like we've had the archetype of God of just being perfect, right? That's what we've had for centuries. But Baba really kind of broke that mold to show that he had moods and he had all of this. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
All right, Vijay in India, I guess this morning, Vijay. So good morning, Shivava. Do you want to click the mute button to put yourself on mute?
Good morning and very good Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Margi. I got the email. So regarding sharing about Baba's human aspect, and since I met Baba a few times, I mean, since my childhood, I thought I would share those precious moments with you. And of course, Baba was so human, and he was so sensitive and compassion. Because of course, when in 1953, I got a touch from him. He shook my hand at Nagpur. I don't remember that. In 1960, actually, my father, since 1938, he was connected with Baba as a 14-year-old boy. And Baba called him fit for the path. So, and he asked him also to be part of his mandali, but because of his job and other responsibilities, family responsibility, he says it is not possible. Then Baba say, okay, you do your worldly work and but be connected with me. So time to time, my father used to visit him, and in 1915 he used to visit Baba at Guru Prasad, and in 1959 when he did not go there, so Baba through Adike Irani gave him a 2-page telegram, and he said that why we were all looking for you. I still have that telegram with me. And so we were looking for you, and Baba would be the happiest if Sulu would come. My father's name is Sulu. And so in 1960, June, my father decided for the Sahibas, and he took me along, and we both came to Nagar. Anyway, it was 8th June, 1960. And as a child, I was 9-year-old, and I was really curious to see Baba because I heard about his godhood, and I knew that he's a God in human form. And because of the various Baba programs and in my house and meeting all Baba lovers those days, so and it was a spontaneous love for the Sadguru. Means mostly the people in India, the culture is like they were connected with some guru, or because he was my family guru, I had great regard for love for him and attraction. So when we reached Guru Prasad, and I was first all very curious how he looked like, how he would be. And in the train also, I had thought about how he would be. I just immersed in his thoughts. So when we reached Guru Prasad, when Baba was giving interviews, family, he was calling each person, each lover personally. And so I just came to know that Baba is in this room in Guru Prasad. Right side there was a room when you enter in the Mandli hall, and right side there is a room. So I kept passing to and fro, and when I could not manage, I went to the window, and I just raised the shutter. It was a wooden window, and I just peeped in, and it was Baba's face from my side, and its back was to me, and Baba was talking to somebody, and I just focused on like this, and I was just got absorbed watching him. And after some time, while I was absorbed, I felt somebody grabbed my collar and pulled me back, and I turned my face, and it was Arich, and he was really very angry. And he said, "How could you peep into Baba's room?" And he was so angry that he would have slapped me. But there was someone passing by, and he says, he closed the window. Arats openly again. No, let him close. And I was very scared. I closed, and anyway, I was very sad. And then Baba's call comes. The Rustam, the boys, they were 14, 15 years old boys, healthy boys. They come running. Sulu, 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 Baba's calling. And we were ready there, and we both rushed inside. And first, Baba, I was hoping that I might get something from Baba. So, but Baba asked my father, where you been? You are supposed to come on 5th. Why didn't you come? No, you did. Why didn't you come on 5th June? There were 10,000 people. And Baba remembered him and say, Baba, I could not come due to my official involvement. He was a clerk in a defense organization. So Baba said, okay. Then I was looking at him, and I thought, before he says, I should talk to him. And I said, Baba, I get scared in darkness. And Baba looked at me, and he said, do you take my name? And the thought, I was kneeling on my knees and and the thought came in my mind, my God, he's God. I should not lie to him. And I said, no, Baba. And he said, take my name. And so that was the first impression. And he was so nice, hugged and loved, and say, take my name. Then we stayed there for 4 days till 11. And during this time, there were many instances where I was a 9-year-old, and just moving here, there. And so what I was always following Baba. So one day I saw Baba entered into a small cabin, just in the veranda right side. And so when I saw Baba entering into that room, I just ran, and I just sneaked behind him in the room. And inside the room, there was a sculpture who was making Baba's bust white color. And Baba looking at his own bust, and he's telling the sculpture like this. Means from here you do this, you do this, telling the sculpture, you make like this. And I was looking at him and then sculpture, and he did not mind my presence, like go away or something. No, he was so kind. Then the one example, one day Baba came in the veranda of the Guru Prasad Bangla, and there was a dead body passing in front of the long gate on the road. From the road, Baba could see that procession, dead body, some Muslim procession going on, and all the mandali were there, and there was pin drop silence. And I came running, whoo, like this, doing and making noise, and then Mandli says, "Shh, Baba," and I also stopped immediately. But Baba, he also turned his back face, and he just looked like this to me. And that look, it was not an angry look or some kind of disturbed, irritated or no. It was just a child like, and he curiosity, and he looks at me. I cannot forget the look. Yeah. Then in the rooms, Baba used to play cards with the, so there were side room. So there were 10, 12 people, and Baba playing with them the card, they distribute, and then you have to show the card. And then Baba, and when somebody lose, they have to rub their nose. So while they are rubbing their nose, Baba, and I was there, I was not included in the game, but I was sitting there. I was watching both the Baba and I was watching those lovers. And when they lose, they rub their nose, and Baba's just laughing, and he is so means teasing them, and he's laughing at them. That was so natural. Means he's laughing, and those means such a gracefully, and Baba was so graceful and amazing. That divine personality I have not seen. Somebody is so means like electricity. His eyes like a lion, and that white sadra, my God, he looked like an angel. They are blessed those who have seen him. Really, I means nobody has seen a person like that. So then in the hall, when the lovers sit, they Baba say, okay, sing. And one by one, I am sitting next to my father, and my father sang, and the next person sang. And then there was sitting Dr. C.D. Deshmukh. And Dr. C.D. Deshmukh was very fond of singing and learning music. And just he goes like, oh, and Baba started laughing and laughing. My God, he's so enjoying. And bless this C.D. Deshmukh that he entertained Baba so much. So while I was sitting by the side of while playing Baba cards, I was sitting, and of course I was watching both. So there was a switch by the Baba's left side, sofa side, and that switch was meant to call the attendant who when the switch is pressed, the attendant would come and ask Baba if anything required. So I didn't realize the switch was there, and I just pressed it. The person comes first time, and Baba say, no, I didn't call you. So he goes away, he just keeps doing that. Again I pressed. Again he comes, and so Baba said to RH, look who is, and they found me holding the sticks in my hand. And but it was not any irritation for Baba and all. He was so compassionate. He said, "This is a mischievous. You mean chanchal means agile boy." Yeah. So when you look at him, the people start crying because when he is so, people were they will not leave. Baba, one Parsi lady, she was not going to leave. She was crying, and then Baba called Pukar. Pukar was there. Baba says, "Open your shirt," and he hits on the belly of Pukar. And see, my obedience, whatever, even if it hurts you, you should follow it. So those moments are really means he was so human. So and see the way he contacted 20,000 mosques or more, and in the mid time he's waiting outside the hut of a mosque for hours. I think is so amazingly. I think of course he was God in human form, but such a humility, I think one must cry if he comes to know that he was so humble, so nice, and yeah. But his own near Mandli man or his near one, he was really sometimes hard also. Even Baba Ken also. So they are also blessed. Those who got his canning or his anger or something. Baba once kicked a person with his leg, and his back pain got okay. He had a back pain, so and his pain was relieved. Yeah. So there, but these are some precious moments I like to share with you all, and I thought, yeah. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, Margi. Thank you, and thank you
Yeah.
everyone listening. Yeah. Say
Thank you
bye-bye.
for sharing your stories.
Yeah.
That's so, and I actually didn't know that you met Baba. That's incredible.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
It explains why you're so smiley all the time.
See, Baba was smiling, and when you remember Baba's face, na, yeah, immediately you will get the smile. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vijay.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
There's a story that I was hoping to share that really hit me one day about just how human Baba really was. So there's a story of him and Margaret Krask, and this is when they were sort of touring in Europe. And I guess Margaret just had this burst of energy to kind of do something mischievous or to, like, you know, kind of get crazy. And she shot Baba this look, and Baba looked at her like he knew exactly. I mean, obviously he knew exactly what she was thinking. And I forget what the gesture was, but he basically was like, you know, well, what do you want to do? And Margaret picked Baba up on her back and ran around in a circle, like laughing and, you know, joking, running around with Baba on her back. And then her and Baba danced. And she said that it was like, Baba was the most effortless, beautiful, graceful dancer. And something about that just brought home to me how much Baba is our friend and our, like, he is in the humanity as much as we are, even in those, you know, when you know, everybody knows that feeling when you just get that burst, when you want to do something like mischievous or you want to make a ruckus. And Baba, from reading the story, it was like, he was so excited about it. He was, even that mood and that little whim that she had, he entertained. And I really think that's like one of the most beautiful parts about Baba is we put Baba out here when really he's right here and he's experiencing everything that we are. And sometimes, I don't know if this is your experience, but I know when I was younger and I was kind of questioning Baba, when I thought my dad, or I'd have moments where I thought my dad was just like a crazy hippie, I'd read these Baba stories and I'm like, how can this be God? I mean, he did some really like just normal things, like get mad at people or, you know, react in a strange way that seems so human. And, you know, of course, the more that I've like fallen in love with Baba, I can see that it's he does it for our benefit. All of these like trivial human things he does to connect with us on our level and really meeting us where we're at. Because if he was talking about higher states of consciousness and nothing but that, our brains would get turned off. Like we can only take, reading God Speaks. And some people, I know for myself, my tolerance for God Speaks is a lot less than other people. And, those stories are really what allow us to connect to him. And I'm going to keep talking until somebody decides to put their hand up, because no one's coming forward. I'm hoping that when I say something, it'll trigger.
I was just gonna add, like, in terms of all these old stories that we have from different avataric folklore, I think the most important thing is to realize that a human life doesn't need to be stuffy and dignified and so on and so forth, right? This is a misconception that the institutions have imposed. Like, if you look at Krishna's life, Krishna was like breaking butter pots and like chasing the cowherds and the gopis, and he had a great time doing it. So I think the most important lesson I've gotten, and it's been important for me because I started off thinking about spirituality as sort of a very serious affair when I was younger. It is serious in the sense that the pursuit of God is like the only thing really worth taking seriously, but it doesn't mean that you lose your humanity. You have to be divine in the midst of being human, and that includes doing all the stupid shit that a human does. In fact, it's a wonderful part of the experience, right? Because if you don't go through that, well, you don't really get the full human experience, I'd say. And that includes going through the pain and the grief, and also letting go of the shame, like, oh, I should not be feeling this. No, that's not right. You should feel it. You're human, and it's okay.
Yeah, beautiful, beautifully said. No, it's very true. And
Baba
also,
used to remind, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Baba used to remind in mid that see, I am playing with you, I am talking with you, I am listening music. So, but don't forget at the same time that I am God in human form. So, yeah, that he used to tell.
I don't
But
know.
he
if
liked
this is-
jokes, joking and humor. He was really means humor.
Yeah. Now he connected to us but something, I don't know, something about that, the fact that God connects to us through humor. I think sometimes we have this idea that we're here kind of stuck on this physical plane of existence and it's so miserable and we're just like suffering and just waiting to get to him. But I think really it's about, understanding that this is where the joy and the love is. Because once we're gone, we're no more. There's just infinite consciousness. That joy and that love, that rich experience is we're able to experience here. Or even, what Erich would say is he would, there's a story of him in Monterey Hall where he was like, I would come back as a mangy dog just to be at his feet again.
Yeah.
I mean, this was Erich. He spent so much one-on-one time with Baba, and he probably was pretty close to having his card punched. I don't know where he was at. I don't know how the spiritual world works, but if I was to guess, he was definitely farther than any of us, I think. And he didn't want to leave. He just wanted to be here, to be back with him in the world. And I think that says so much, that we really try to escape what is here with Baba. And so I welcome everybody to share if they have any experiences where Baba's humanity really kind of hit home. I have one more story that I can share that Laurent actually just told me, but one day Baba asked Naju, who was a little girl at the time, to climb Seclusion Hill with him, or he had to go up. I forget exactly why, but they were climbing up Seclusion Hill, and Baba, how he used to glide and just his walk was so graceful. And so he was going up Seclusion Hill so quickly. And she was saying, Baba, can you please slow down? Like, I can't keep up. And first of all, I just think that's so beautiful that a child has the wherewithal to ask God to slow down. Like, I've often had that thought in my own life when things are just like too fast and Baba's throwing things at me. It's just to be like, Baba, can you please slow down? Like, I can't handle it. And she just did it. Baba was a human to her. And Baba looked at her and said, okay, and put her on his shoulders and said, if anybody comes and I have to put you down, but I'll put you on my shoulders and I'll carry you up. And how beautiful is that, you know, I think we often feel too prideful to ask Baba for help on that level, but he's willing to, like, he knows our limits of our humanity. It's like, it really makes me want to cry just thinking about like him picking up this little girl and putting her on his shoulders. But he's willing to meet us within our limits of humanity. Okay, I'm gonna have to start calling on people. Oh, thank you, Rich.
I really don't know how to quite address this, but I think that for me, I think it's Baba for me is more like that desperate person who simply must have the solution or the amelioration, you know, or the compassion of God, and God as reality, because everything else is illusion. So that means I must be a sort of a wild soul. I don't know, but that desperation for me, and what's on his tomb, I have not come to teach, but to awaken. So the personal side of Baba, I really think it's probably much tougher for me. It's tougher for me because obviously I never met him, and I didn't have enough time to spend around the Mandalay on any occasion to really get a feeling of his personality from them. Couple of the books, you know, like long ago, Erich's first book, I think it's called The Ancient One, but he tells a lot of stories. That was my first glimpse probably into Baba as a working master, you know, with what we'll say are his lovers. But well, for example, there's the one story of there might be a couple of them. I might be mixing them up. One story of the guy who he came to Baba with his wife, and I think he asked Baba for money. He wanted money, wanted wealth. He wanted to treat his wife and family, wanted a status in the community. And Baba said, no, you don't. You don't want that. Just let it be and come back to me, you know. So he comes back and he says, Baba, I want money. I want wealth. I want money to take care of my family, my wife, and all the blah, blah, blah. And so Baba says, I'm telling you, you do not want that. And so I think he came back a third time, but he insists, Baba, I want money. So he says, do you want me? Baba says, you want me to stick my hand in shit? Give that to you? That's what you want? And, but anyway, so along the way, pretty soon this family became, I don't know if wealthy, but very flush with cash, and his wife had jewelry and all this stuff. And turns out he started embezzling, you know. I think he had a government job. And so he was embezzling. And finally, years and years later, after he was convicted and got out of prison, he came back to see Baba. I don't know if I'm mixing two stories, but I believe this is the same one. But so he comes back to see Baba, and Baba looks at him and says, did you do it? And the guy looks at him very honestly and says, yes, Baba, I did it. So he had to go to prison. But he was a follower of Baba. He knew Baba. He believed in Baba. But he couldn't, you know, he pushed himself. So Baba, even knowing Baba, look at Rustam, you know, Mara's brother-in-law, right? Was that Adi's brother? You know, he married Franny and had kids. Evidently, it was just enough to where, you know, he left. He just left Baba. That was it. So for me, it's this awakening, this inner connection. Like Dr. Kenmore and Baba mentioned this, Baba's the powerhouse. So you want to make sure your line is attached to Baba. You hold on to his demand. So when he flips that switch or whatever it is, that you get your fair share of cleansing juice. I don't know if you'll get Yogi said scars. I don't know how it all works, but so the personal side of Baba it's honestly, it's kind of rough for me. Yes, I don't know.
No, I actually really appreciate you sharing that, because I've had that feeling many times in my life where I've kind of been like, this shatters my idea of God. So I prefer, like, there's a really long time I didn't read any stories of Baba because I didn't like them. It was like, oh, well, that's not what my idea of what Baba was like. And so I don't really want to know about that, because like Baba's so present here that it shatters the idea that I have of him. And so I understand what you're saying 100%. I actually recently have I've started reading Mara Meher, and I don't know if you've ever read it, but it really, something about it from the view of Mara's eyes creates a shift. Because when I read stories, I've read Erich's book, which is beautiful, but you know, just like Lord Meher, it seems so limiting, right? For the God man, like what? Like this is what he did, or like, you know, it's.
Well, he humanized the women. They worked in ordinarily what you'd call drudgery, and they didn't have any freedoms. They couldn't make themselves appear attractive. They had nothing. They stitched together what they had in the early days. You know, in anybody else doing that, but he was the avatar. And of course, Mara's only focus. And so with that, they just couldn't wait to see him again when he would appear.
Yeah.
But that's personal. You're right. That personalizes Baba, you know?
Yeah, it paints it in a different color, because Mara truly, I mean, maybe I'm wrong into this, but I think that Mara was really the only one who truly understood that everything he ever did was for our sake. And so reading Mara Meher allows that kind of stuff that makes you have a question mark about Baba's life to be like, wow, okay, this was her experience of just love. Yeah. Okay, we have Ron.
Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.
I was thinking of a story that I like to tell. I can't remember if I told it. I'm sure I must have told it on one of these Zoom meetings, but maybe not the people that are here. So I'm hoping it might be somewhat fresh, although I find it's fun to tell over and over again, because this is a story about Baba in 1954 in Andhra State. And there were these people, four people who were in Andhra State that would set up all the various gatherings that Baba would go to, the darshan programs. And one of the fellows' name was Shastri. And so Mr. Shastri, one day after one of these meetings with Baba, he was feeling like something had gone wrong, and he was wondering how he could have prevented it, or just feeling not good about the whole situation. He was just pondering it, and then all of a sudden somebody interrupted him, came up to him and said, Shastri, just double checking, but Baba will be coming to our center to the hall tonight. Is that, you did set that up, right? And then Shastri, went, oh gosh, what have I done? I forgot to tell Baba and the Madhuli about this particular group that he was supposed to arrange for. And so, oh my God, he didn't know what to do. He's beside himself. He ran over to the place that Baba was staying. And in this particular place, Baba only had two of his Madhuli, Erich and Pendu, staying with him there. And the other Madhuli were in another house, maybe a half a mile away or something. And Shastri runs in and he's looking around, and Pendu hears somebody come in. He comes in, he says, what are you doing here? Are you, you're disturbing Baba. He's upstairs eating now. So you shouldn't really be here. He says, oh, this is something I have to deal with. I was supposed to set up this meeting, and it went out of my mind. I didn't remember to tell the right people and to let any of the Madhuli know about this. So he said, well, Pendu said, just wait here, please. And he goes upstairs, comes back down, and he says, Baba wants to see you. So go upstairs. So Shastri goes upstairs, and he goes into the room, and there's Baba sitting at this little table and a tray of food sitting there. It looks like he hasn't really gotten into it yet, but so this plate of food is there, and nobody else is there. No other Mondelez or anybody is there, and this was such an odd experience to be with Baba all by himself. And so, of course, Baba had heard from Pendu what the story was, and so Baba motioned like this. He says, "Come here," you know. Didn't say it, but of course he motioned for Shastri to come over. And so as Shastri was walking toward Baba, this thought came into his mind. I wonder if Baba has teeth, because he was wondering about, you know, Baba was about to eat food, and he's thinking, does Baba have any teeth? You never could see Baba's teeth. So this odd thought, I mean, it was an odd time to get a thought such as that, but there it was. So Baba calls Shastri over, and so Baba takes a handful of food off of this plate, and he stands up, and Shastri, and he motions to Shastri like, open your mouth, you know. And so and in order to do that, Baba opens his mouth, and there it was. Shastri's got a good look inside Baba's mouth, and in fact, he didn't have any teeth in there. So he answered Shastri's question, but not only that, Baba shoved this handful of food right down into his mouth. And so there he is chewing away at this food while Erich walks in. And when Erich came in, and he was beside himself, he was like really angry, because Baba had been with this long darshan program that day, and he needed to rest, he needed to eat. This was his time off. This was, you know, to replenish himself. And he heard from Pendu that Shastri had forgotten to do this, but he says, sorry, that will be your fault. So, you know, you'll have to go tell the people that you failed in your duty to inform us about this. And so as he's railing against Shastri, Baba stops him. And then he looks over at Shastri, and then he takes Erich like this with his hand under his chin like this. And he's holding it out there. And he says, see this man? See how he takes care of me? He's a jewel. He's like, my mother couldn't take care of him better than this man could. He's just a wonderful disciple. And Erich is having to say this, of course, because he's talking for Baba to Shastri. But then he says, then he looks over at Erich and he goes, get everybody ready, we're leaving. And so they get in the car to go to this hall where the people are waiting for Baba. And so it's Pendu, Erich, and Shastri and Baba. So, and they get there, or they're on the way there, and they're passing by the house where the other Mandali are, and Shastri says to Baba, we're going to be passing right by where the other Mandali are. If you want to stop, maybe you should stop and bring them along, or tell them to come and meet us there. And Baba looks at Shastri, and here's something that is kind of human-like. He sort of gives him oh, now you want to bother my Mandali. You know, this wasn't bad enough that you had to interrupt my dinner and and my rest. Now you're going to bother the Mandali. They're probably eating their dinner too. Anyhow, he didn't stop. But on the way there, Baba says, this is what you need to do when we get there. You need to go in to the people and say there are 3 conditions that all the people there will need to abide by if I'm going to give darshan tonight. And so Shastri says, well, what are the conditions, Baba? He says, first of all, I don't want anybody to give me any gifts. And then I don't want anybody to bow down. And no one should say Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai. which at this particular time was the coolest thing ever, because this was when it first happened, where Baba announced that he was the avatar and said, Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai. Every Baba lover was doing that at that time. So he says, none of that though. So Shastri goes in and tells the people, will everybody abide by these conditions? And all of the people there agreed to the conditions. And he told Baba and Erich and Pendu come in. And Baba looks at the people and tells them how happy he is that they were willing to abide by his conditions and follow these instructions. But he says, now, I do want to say something else. And that is that if anybody brought any gift that you would want to give to me, well, that would be fine. Just go ahead and bring the gift, and you can give me the gift. Plus, if anybody wants to bow down to me, I'll be here until everybody who wants to has the chance to do it. So if you want to bow down, you will be able to have that chance. And lastly, if you would like to say Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai, go right ahead and do it. And I bet there were some Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jais, a lot of them. Anyhow, that's the story of how Baba works with situations. You know, it's just an amazing, masterful way of dealing with all the different personalities and how he dealt with his lovers and his disciples.
Yeah, so beautiful. And he caters to the hearts of all, even if he uses it to kind of destroy people. I mean, even in Mary Meher, so much of what I'm reading is, he'll kind of use something to get, destroy the ego, but then he always comes back around and just, cradles them and tells them what a lovely jewel they are. Yeah, thank you for sharing that story.
Well, what you just said, it reminds me, and I'm sure maybe all of you have heard that anecdote where Erich showed some of the pilgrims, the fellow with the ceramics wheel fashioning a pot. And in order to do fashioning the pot, he had a little tool that he would hit the pot with. He would hit it and mold it into the shape that he wanted. But on the inside of the pot, his hand would be inside supporting them so they wouldn't fall, collapse. And I just happened to tell that story to some ceramics people that were giving a presentation. I just happened to go and I just told that anecdote to them because
that's great.
Reminded by it. Yeah.
Oh, I like that analogy a lot, actually. It's really beautiful. Okay, we have Hari.
I came across this really, really interesting author named Christian Sundberg, who remembers his pre-birth experience. And I thought of this topic for a couple of reasons. He was able to remember the absolute bliss that he enjoyed in the spirit world, where he had access to the Akashic records, which I'm assuming is somewhere around fifth plane consciousness. So knew the thoughts and feelings and could see the connections between different souls and all these other things, right? People have these wonderful abilities, the astral realm, similar to that of a perfect master, but then you forget all of that when you incarnate in 3D. So as I read that entire experience, he was talking about how he went from this absolute luminous existence to feeling like he was stuffed inside a crusty sock when he came into his mother's womb. And as amazing as it is for us to go through all of this, I just think to myself, well, if we've gone through all the pain of coming here and going through all that shit, well, we might as well embrace it rather than wanting to run back. I mean, we'll run back eventually, right? Everyone's time is going to run up. But the point is to embrace the shit while it's here, not run away from it. And even for Baba, if you think about his experience of coming down to reality, yes, he became fully human, but that was a painful ordeal. We can't even imagine how painful that was. I was reading this book by a really amazing author named Fred Dodson, and he talks about levels of energy on Earth. And the idea is everyone on Earth, whether they're the avatar or not, is occupying energy level somewhere between a 0 and 1,000. Zero is like complete fear, grief, evil, and 1,000 is unconditional love. And Fred can sense energy in people. So I actually sent him or told him about Meher Baba, because I don't think he's aware, but he mentioned that when he energetically feels people, the highest figures that he's come across in world history are Buddha, Rama, Krishna, and Jesus. And I went, okay, that makes sense. I'm Zoroaster. Well, obviously, Meher Baba would be the same. But the interesting thing he said is, when you're at that energy level, you know, above the 600. So 600 is like a liberated soul, like Ramana Maharshi, he pegged at 600. But someone who has a cosmic consciousness at like an 800 or 900, like Jesus Christ or Baba, they literally feel diaphanous. They have no form to them. It's almost impossible for them to even hold a physical frame. Like the impulse is to just burst and drop the body. And I felt, I knew he knew what he was talking about. I felt the truth in his words. And so for him to go from that state to being in a state where he was fully occupying a body, feeling pains, etc., it must have been probably 1,000 times worse than what Christian went through with his experience going from the spirit world to the physical world. Because when you're in that state, and you see this from near-death experiences, people who experience a fraction of that bliss, even newborn mothers with children, they do not want to come back. It's overwhelming. So I wanted to add to what Margi said, like it's amazing that he was human, but even more amazing because he consciously knew what he was giving up in a way that most people on earth do not, right? He knew that, and he was still able to function in a completely human sense. It's kind of like having, you know, been in this beautiful forest, knowing what a beautiful forest looks like, and then being forced to, you know, live in a desert your entire life, fully knowing what the forest looks like, right? That's what the experience is, but I think it makes him all the more great. So if he can do that, then I think even with preliminary spiritual experiences, all of us can enjoy the ride and just be content, because at some point you're going to go back, right? Like you'll get back to the astral planes, the causal plane. It'll happen. Like, why worry is my point.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I mean, even I haven't read this, I've heard this, and so somebody who's read God Speaks or these books can probably tell me the truth of it. But how like the perfect masters don't experience the same pain of being in the world, but the avatar feels everything. And not only, I mean, I think about that, like Baba had regular pains. Just look at his accident, like how much pain, physical pain Baba was in. But at every moment, he was also experiencing every pain in the universe and complete consciousness and awareness of that and what that was like. And Jeff told me the story how he asked Erich, you know, what it was like being with Baba and how aware of his suffering they were. And Erich replied, we were only aware of his suffering. That, you know, the sweetness that we see of Baba, the Mandali, the close ones, were only aware of Baba's suffering.
And you've probably heard of that incident where he had to have an injection in his trigeminal nerve, but he specifically asked, and I've wondered for this, and then the answer came to me intuitively a few days ago, wondered why did he ask Dr. Ginde not to give him anesthesia? I realized he could not deaden himself to full consciousness of all the pain in the world at any given moment. So every waking moment, like he said, he was being crucified. That's the only way to describe it.
Yeah. Marion, did you have something that you wanted to share? You had your hand up.
I did. Well, I'll say something. I didn't know if I could really put it into words succinctly, but I'll do my best because I appreciate being here and everybody sharing so much. I know what, you know, Bob always said. I think what stood out to me about that human, you know, that it struck me so deeply in learning that he's totally human and divine. So it's an and, not an either or, an and. And so what he suffered, it was true suffering. And even though it's all an illusion, it's suffering. Being in this illusion means serving God by being here and being my human being. So with that, saying that, I think what helped me a lot, because professionally I've helped a lot of people as a counselor go through the lower self. And as Baba said, everybody's got a lower self, and even a six-plane master still has a lower self. And so in helping people, I have to do what I help others with, and that is go through my dark side, go through my shadow side, all my envy, revenge, hate, all that stuff, lust, greed, pride. And because there's a divine kernel at the core of all of it. So it's a divine journey to go through the lower self. And as one of my teachers said, you do, as a metaphor, you don't do it except with the hand of God. You don't do this by yourself. And so with that, I appreciated Baba really at times in reading it, because I didn't meet him embodied, he'd be playing a game, playing with somebody, and at times he would stop sometimes and say, never forget that I am God. He always brought back that consciousness for others, no matter how silly it was, no matter how light, whatever, playing games, never forget that I am God. So that has helped me in going through the shadow side into the light of reminding me of the people that I'm finding that I have some judgments toward, or like I want to shake them or whatever. Oh, they're God, And so I find that it helps me to complain about that, because Baba wants everything. And I was the original, as far as my mask was, of being good and right and, being appropriate and proper and all that. So for me, Baba always smiles when I complain. I use one of his main photographs, and I have my complaining sessions. So I have 3 complaining sessions mapped out a day. So I'm not always complaining, but 3 designated complaining times. And then I tell Baba what triggers me, and that I'm releasing it from my energy field so that I may be filled with his light, love, and life. And then I've been trained like how to release that. And so that's been very liberating for me. And the compassion that Baba has for that human self. And so my complaint time brings me closer to Baba. And so that makes me smile. It helps me go through my shadow side into the light. So I appreciate his times. He said, never forget, I am God.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I was actually just talking to Diane and Terry the other day. We were talking about you, Marianne. We said, yep, her and her toolbox, the ever abundant toolbox.
Complaint.
It was Wendy Connor. She said that when she was with Baba, that he would say, and he made this motion, he said, never forget, I am the highest. I am the highest of the high. And this was his symbol for it. Okay, Tony, you were quiet for a while today.
I'm still quiet. I have nothing clearly to say except there's a lot coming up, and I'm just gonna speak. Go for it. I don't know who I am, so I definitely don't know who Baba is, but I know who Baba is to me. And to me, Baba is this eternal being who is very human, and happens to be my friend. And the best friend one could ever have. When I hear sometimes Baba did this, Baba used to, Baba was doing, it makes me a little nuts. I can't think of Baba in the past tense, because Baba is always in the present tense. The now is the only time that's real. So everything that has happened in Baba's incarnation, in every incarnation, is happening right now. And we are off somewhere else in our imagination, making it the past or the future. Baba, what was the thing? I sit with you, I play with you, but familiarity makes you forget that I am God. I know everything that has happened and everything that will happen and all that. But for me, it's just this person, yes, he's God. Of course he's God, but it's not like, what is God as a word? It's a word for what Baba is. I have no other definition of God but what Baba is. But also human, because that's the other thing is, he who is everywhere present, I always think it should be he who is everywhere present, but in the everything and the nothing, Baba says, he who knows everything displaces nothing. To each one, I appear to be what he thinks I am. And it's like Baba, in my experience, my feeling, my sense of it all, is Baba is for each one of us exactly who we need him to be. So when my mother needed him to be like just a saint or a holy person, but not, that's who he was. But that's who he is, not was. He is to each one of us exactly what we need him to be at every moment. But I appreciate the sense of his humanity, his playfulness, but they're glimpses. They're like, sometimes this is my experience. Sometimes he shows his godness. Sometimes he shows his human. I've had Baba when I did something that he clearly wanted me not to do again. It had to do with really not being focused on what his wish was. And suddenly, in my mind's eye, he was looking at me with such anger. And I'll never forget it. It was 40 years ago, but it's like it was yesterday. Um, and then it was gone. I mean, but I know whenever I think I'm going to do something that's spiritual rather than tuning in to what Baba wants me to do right now, that's the response I may get because I may miss the thing he wants me to be doing. So his
Tony,
let me get going just a little bit more because if I stop, I won't know where I am. um, Never mind. That's already happened now. Please go on.
I'm sorry. I
Okay.
was going to comment that I think what you said that came to a thought as me. That's one of the reasons why it's so hard for me to explain who Baba is to anybody. What you said, because he is what he is to me, and he's either present, and I can sense his presence, or I'm lost, or whatever. But what you said, that's I cannot explain Baba to people. Doesn't matter what I say.
Yeah, but
Sorry
I don't.
for interrupting.
I think even not to ourselves. You know, when you think you have gotten me, you haven't gotten me. I don't. That's not an exact quote, but it's what I am grateful for is that to the extent that I am willing to surrender more of me, more stuff, more to the extent that I'm willing to say, all right, let's have it your way. Baba is really very, very, very present and willing and eager and happy to jump in and say, good, I'll take this, I'll take that. Now, how do you like the way you feel now? You know, yeah, Baba is great. And if I'm not ready, I mean, you know, I mentioned something about my daughter. If she's like, push Baba, he's put him in a little separate box. She doesn't think about him. She doesn't. The relationship is so intense that she can only manage it by putting him in a box and not thinking about him. But he's always. But that's who she needs Baba to be at this moment, you know. So, and that's who Baba will be. On the other hand, as you know, Ken Moore's story about how you approach Baba makes a difference. So just flipping the coin, the same truth. He tells the story of Balul. Baba told the story of Balul the Must, and he was just sitting on the streets, and he was off in the plains, but sometimes he would be aware of what was happening around him, and these three guys are walking past, and just mockingly, young guys, and they said to him, "Oh, great and wise Balul! Oh, all-knowing Balul!" This fellow says, "Tell me how to invest. How should I invest my money?" And Balul happened to hear it. And just out of that consciousness, he came and he said, "Store sugar." And they all laughed. Oh, this crazy guy. But this guy went home. He took everything he had and he invested it in sugar. And the sugar market went through the roof. And long story short, he became one of the richest men in India. And he had factories and he had businesses and he had all this stuff. And years pass, and he happens to be walking down that same street with those same friends. And he sees Balul. And once again, he sees him. He says, "Oh, you mad Balul! How should I invest my money?" And Balul again happened to hear it, and he says, "Buy onions." And so he went home, and he had all of his businesses liquidate and put all the money that he had into onions. And the bottom dropped out of the onion market and they rotted in the warehouses. And within a short time, he's penniless and just wandering through the streets in rags. And who does he run into but Balul? And he goes up to him and he says, you did this to me." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I came the first time and I said, how should I invest my money? And you said, buy sugar, and I did, and it made me a wealthy man. And the second time you said, buy onions, and now I'm penniless." And Balul said, "Well, the first time you said, oh, great, wise, all-knowing Balul, how should I invest my money? Well, I gave you advice befitting one who is great and wise and all-knowing. The second time, you addressed me as, oh, you mad Balul. what kind of advice did you expect from a madman? And Ken Moore's point in telling the story was how you approach Baba will make all the difference in the world as to what you experience and what you receive. But who Baba actually is, the other thing that occurred to me is like, we think, oh, Baba did this, or this was Baba's way of working, or Baba did. And it's like infants almost, certainly very young children, like guessing what daddy does when he goes to the office and he's doing like stock transfers and business mergers or whatever the hell. It's like you don't know anything about that, so we make up a story about what Baba is doing. The only person who has a clue is the person at all, I think, is the person who's the recipient of that particular event. I'm so glad I left it to Baba to speak, because I really like what I'm hearing. And it wouldn't have been well if I'd planned it. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba, Tony. Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I think also I don't know if this is your experience, guys, but I found that it was much easier for me to relate to God or Baba as God. But the more that I've made Baba as God a part of my life, he unveils his humanity. So, what started out as just this relationship with something that I knew more than me, as a kid, I was with talking to Baba, right? And it was just like, oh, all powerful Baba, kind of like Wizard of Oz. And now as that intimacy has grown with him, now I see his humanity, because it's like Tony said, it's there's a whole spectrum, right? And then he gives you little glimpses of each spectrum. Okay, we have Shri.
Yeah, Tony, I resonated with what you said on it's about how you approach him. And I think, Margie, that's what you were getting at right now too. I think oftentimes one of my, I guess, one of the things that I'd like to get better with personally is my temper. I can lose my temper pretty quick, even if it's like internally, and I want to not do that. But when I do that, I often also lose my temper at Baba. And it's fine. Like, he's fine with it. He loves me. He'll forgive me, but it's not something I want to continue to do. And I've realized that the times when I lose my temper at him, or when I think, kind of like what you just said, like he's like this giant force up in the universe, and it's like, why are you doing this to me? And it's kind of realizing that, yes, obviously he is God, he's controlling everything, but at the end of the day, if you're him, then you're controlling everything as well. And I think that kind of like realization where you realize like he is much closer to you than you think he is, and it's more of like an equal partnership. But it's not equal, but I think you all know what I'm trying to say. I think that's when he becomes more human to me, and I stop viewing him as like some man in the sky who's like controlling the universe, which again he is. But I get what I'm saying. Sounds like very hypocritical, but I think it makes sense mostly. But I realized that, yeah, like when I lose my temper, it's when I think he's like the big man in the sky. And when I don't do that, or when I don't think that way, it's easier to kind of like get through the daily like struggles of life, or even the larger, longer term struggles of life. But I also think it's something that I have to work on, because one, I haven't consciously known of Baba for a long time. But two, growing up, my relationship with God was pretty skewed by just, I think, how like any major religion, like I grew up in a Hindu family, but any major religion, I feel like, teaches you to fear God. And I think a lot of that is still kind of like in my DNA. It's kind of like been ingrained. So I think it takes work to like kind of scrub that out. And like, I know that Baba is my friend, but sometimes it's hard to feel that. Like you can know it from like a factual perspective, but like feeling it is different than knowing it. And so, yeah, I think it's oftentimes we just have to think of him more as an equal, even though again, he's not. But I think if you do, when you want to sit down and cry and say like, oh, why is this happening to me? Like, why are you doing this to me? Like, oh, you're being so rude to me, blah, blah, blah. Like, why have you made my life this way? I think it makes it easier to take a step back and say, well, talk it out with him like you'd talk it out with your best friend or whoever in your life.
Wow, so beautifully said, Shri. You really have a good way of bringing it to the heart place. But also, I think you make a really, it's kind of like a reflection. If I understand what you're saying, that, you know, of course, we don't want to take credit for controlling what happens, but it's like Baba gave us this playground in a way, you know, all this self-help that's kind of going on in the world is, you know, the concept, and I'm talking about like The Secret and all of these different healing modalities, et cetera. It's really like, it all comes back to us, right? Anything that we experience is because we're in control. And in a way, it's kind of like, it's like Baba gave us this playground to understand that, right? Like, we're not in charge of the universe, but we can be the pilots of our own lives for his sake, you know? And it's like a little version of what Baba's doing, right? Like, we have a control over all of our relationships, all of our experience, knowing that it's just a little micro of the macro. So really, really beautifully said. Thank you. I just before we go to Vijay, I want to share one more thing, kind of playing off of what you're saying, Shri, too, about being embarrassed to bring anger. And so one time Jeff was in Mandali Hall and asking Erich, and he said, Erich, you say we're supposed to give everything to Baba, but what about if we go out and we get drunk in the streets and then we're all hungover and we just feel a mess? And Erich said, yeah, give your hangover to Baba. And Jeff goes, I'm supposed to give my hangover to Baba? Like, what? And he said, yeah. And then the embarrassment of having to bring your beloved such a lowly gift will deter you from doing it ever again. So, yeah. Okay, we have Vijay.
Yeah, well, Tony inspired me to speak. So I think most of us do Baba prayer, Parvardiga prayer every day. And of course, it's great. And one means I really love it. And so here Baba has described our Parvardiga, the preserver, protector, your in the three world, means he described the God. How in the forward Dikar prayer, praise of Lord, and we have to trust. So trust, of course, discussion will not take you any discussion on God and his greatness, but the trust factor is so important that on the spiritual path, in the inner life, we go with the trust only. Baba admired Sulu, that his trust, he's really great, and he folded his own hand to it's given in the Lord Maha. So with the trust, if we go, then definitely we are going to, and even that trust, how it comes, then taking Baba's continuous name, remembering Baba, and that will increase our trust, and then we are able to get something. Yeah. Thank you. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Jai Baba. I feel like I'm talking a lot tonight, but until somebody else puts their hand up, I'm gonna keep going. But something happened to me when I guess I was probably 13. Bill LePage and I were always super close because he would come to Myrtle Beach and I was in Myrtle Beach. So I would just sit next to him and Diana, like looking up and listening. And he was telling a story of when during the 3 Incredible Weeks, Baba stopped the program and said, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity for you to just sit and look at me. And I think there was more context to the story, but it was this. And coming from my perspective, I had grown up in a Baba family, and Baba was God. He was this like all powerful person that sometimes I wasn't sure was crazy, or, you know, like, I didn't know if it was my dad's hippie thing, but yeah, for all I knew, Baba was this all powerful, like I said, Wizard of Oz. And Bill said he just stared and looked at Baba, and he saw Baba for what he was. And he didn't say, oh, I saw Baba in the infinite and expansive. He said, I saw him as a forlorn lover, desperately looking for a home in anyone he could find. And it hit me so hard at 13 that that's really who Baba the man was. Is he wasn't this all-powerful God. He was just a forlorn, lost lover looking for his beloved. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point. I was reading this amazing little book called The Jeshua Channelings by a woman named Pamela Cribb, who says that she channels Yeshua, Jesus. And one of the most interesting things in that book is the idea where Jesus is channeled, where he's saying the mission of Jesus on earth was not a guaranteed success by any means. Every time the Messiah comes, it's uncertain in many ways, because the receptivity of consciousness on the planet, well, everyone has free will. They still make their own decisions. So it's not some omnipotent being who comes to lord over. It's someone who, like you said, wants to be loved, and most often can't find anyone who can truly love him the way he deserves to be loved. And that's why, like, when it comes to, you know, our own shortcomings, my shortcomings, when I feel that impulse, oh, I should be loved, does anyone love me? That's the only question anyone has, right? Does anyone truly love me for who I am, unconditionally? I don't feel bad about it, because that's the original impulse of the universe. That's the reason the universe came about in the first place. So when you realize that, you can treat yourself with more kindness as well, and offer yourself self-love. And you realize that at the end of the day, love that you're seeking is not coming from some so-called external source, but you have to be your own engine of love. And I think that's probably the most endearing thing I've read about the Messiah, the fact that even he doesn't know if the journey is going to be a success, right? We've also heard stories about how when, you know, Muhammad came here, the archangel Gabriel gave him messages, and how, you know, he awakened the teacher in Gabriel. But I don't know where I'm going with this, but it makes it all the more human, and the fragility is beautiful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, beautiful. I don't know. This is just a recommendation for you guys. There's a really beautiful series that's out on, it's called angel.com, but it's Angel TV, which is it's like a Christian network. Elisa Genovese told me about it, but it's called The Chosen, and it's episodes of Jesus's life. And somehow, even though it's created by a Christian TV network, it perfectly, it feels like I'm with Baba when I'm watching these episodes, because Jesus is not painted as God. He's painted as this friend who, like, he knows he's God, but he doesn't care that he's God, because he's just desperately hoping for his disciples to come to him and to, you know, turn the key. I highly recommend it. It's really, really well done. It's called The Chosen. Okay, we have Shri.
This is kind of a question to the group, and I don't know how to exactly phrase it, so bear with me. But I think a lot of times, you know, like, we all look at Baba as our friend and all that, but also, and I don't know if this is something that you all have struggled with, but sometimes in a way, and I purely understand this sounds very bad, but sometimes I'm like, well, I get a little jealous, or like almost selfish even, that like everyone gets Baba. And I don't know if that sounds right, or if that is coming across the right way. And I promise I want everyone in the world to love Baba and to know Baba. But what I more so mean is, and I know this is possible because he is infinite, and therefore he can literally be friends with everyone, but your mind doesn't always think that way. And it's kind of the feeling of like when you're in high school and you have a best friend and they start hanging out with someone else more, and you're kind of just like, well, what about me? And it's weird, and I feel bad when I think that way, and I'm not proud of it. But also I know he's like the one person who wouldn't care. But in those times, I often feel really lonely, and it's kind of like, well, you just feel really alone in this universe. And then you start getting into like what I think is like an unhealthy mindset of like, none of this matters. Like, why are we all here? Blah, 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 all that. And then that can, I feel like, go either way for people. And for me, it goes either way. On one hand, I'm like, nothing matters. So like, don't get stressed about work. Don't get stressed about your life. Or the other half is like, well, nothing matters. And now I feel like I'm stuck here for 80 more years doing something that's essentially pointless in like the whole grand scheme of things. I promise I don't sound that depressing all the time, but I was just curious if that's something that like anyone on this call can relate to, and if so, like how do you deal with it?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hear it. We got Rich.
Well, what Shri said just bolted in my mind. I had a thought, but I kept listening to her. Trying to remember the thought. But yeah, I've met some people who I think they're really involved in their suffering. You can tell. I mean, if I was a Christian, I'd say, you've got to grab onto Jesus, and pray and confess and whatever. But but when I see their suffering and I think, oh my God, the only way out is the avatar. It's all you got. And it's like, it's so difficult because that's between them and Baba, It's the avatar can do it. I can.
Yeah. Baba really tests us to accept other people's karma. Okay, we've got Tony up next.
Yeah, to Shri, your Baba is your Baba alone. And that Baba is wholly and solely just for you, has an intimate relationship with your innermost being. And if it's not that for each one of us, then like it's not really Baba that we're talking about, because Baba really is for each one of us in that way, exclusively. And the rational mind can't say how can it be exclusive and for every, but it's both. But your Baba is yours and will never be anything or anyone else but yours, and wholly and solely for you. And for me too in my life. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you, Tony. All right, Vijay.
Hi. Hi, Shri. This jealousy, of course, the material jealousy is not good. And somebody got good car, but this is spiritual jealousy. Baba said this is very good. I used to feel jealousy with those senior Baba lovers, and of course not Mandali. I was not jealous, but those senior Baba lovers around. Of course, now I don't feel jealousy, but so that helps. That spiritual jealousy helps you, and it's a good find that Shri you have started feeling this jealousy, and definitely it will take you to near to Baba. So yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, Baba himself is a jealous God. He doesn't like anybody to.
Oh, I not dare to go to other even perfect masters too and all. I say, oh Baba, I don't want to go. Oh no, don't want to. First, I will. We went recently to Narayan Maharaj, all the Pune group, with all the Pune group. Something like 150 people were there. But we took Baba's picture there. We kept there. We Baba songs and bhajans, and and we told them about Baba. So all this, yeah. So yeah, carry on. It's very good. Spiritual jealousy. Baba said it's good.
Yeah, Baba's so jealous that he doesn't let us have other masters, and he doesn't even let us have other relationships. He'll take relationships away.
That true love is Baba, actually, not even this worldly love. I'm loving my wife, no, or the girlfriend, no. The real love is Baba. The real beloved is Meher Baba.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Vijay.
yeah.
Okay, we've got Ron.
I thought I'd offer a song that came to mind that might fit with the subject. This is a song written by a fellow named David Frischberg. Plays a nice jazz piano, but he's not here, so I'm going to have to sing it a cappella. When you're still, do you hear one small voice, crystal clear, saying, listen here, old friend, listen here. Well, that voice is your own, and it speaks to you alone. You can count on me, it says, so listen here. This is real. This is you. This is real. This is truly the way you feel. You can run, you can hide, but sometime, someplace, each of us winds up face to face with that little voice inside. And we hope and we yearn and we live and sometimes learn from that little voice that whispers crystal clear. And we each hear the call, 'cause it's calling to us all. Follow me, it says, never fear. Listen here, old friend. Listen here.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think that might be a really good place to close it up for the night. Thank you, Ron. That was a beautiful song.
You're welcome.
Shall we have a moment of silence and then 3 Avatar Mayor Barbecue Jays? Avatar Meher Baba
Baba.
Ki
Yeah,
Jai.
Baba
Jai.
Jai.
Avatar
Avatar
Meher
Meher
Baba
Baba
Ki
Baba,
Jai.
Jai. Avatar
Avatar
Meher Baba
Baba
Ki
Baba
Jai.
Ki Jai.
Jai.
Yeah.